Have you ever looked around and noticed something strange? There are people who don't seem that smart. They don't use big words. They don't flex their knowledge. They don't act like they have it all figured out, yet somehow they rise. They climb the ladder faster. They have friends everywhere. They attract opportunities, trust and respect, and achieve the things you dream of. They are not smart, but they are wise in their own way, while you, who've spent years sharpening your intellect, often feel unseen. You try to express your thoughts clearly. You join debates to prove your point. You prepare your words carefully so no one can find a flaw, and yet, somehow, people distance themselves. You can feel it, that invisible wall. They stop opening up. They stop calling you, and you wonder, why? That's the quiet pain. So many intelligent people carry the pain of trying to look smart, and realizing it only isolates you. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "The advantage of a bad memory is that one enjoys several times the same good things for the first time." It sounds playful, but it hides a truth most people never grasp. Nietzsche was saying sometimes the ability to forget, to act as if you don't know, to not always correct, not always prove, can be a gift. In other words, there is a quiet power in appearing foolish. In society, wisdom often hides behind simplicity. The person who seems simple-minded might not actually be naive. They might just understand something deeper, that people open up more when they don't feel outsmarted. That influence is not about showing brilliance, it's about creating space for others to feel seen, safe, and significant. Think about the leaders you truly admire. They rarely dominate conversations. They listen. They ask questions that seem simple but go deep. They make others feel important. And through that, they earn trust quietly, invisibly, powerfully. They're not foolish. They're strategically humble. They understand that real intelligence doesn't need to be displayed. It works best when hidden. But let's be honest, you felt the opposite. You've been that person who wanted to share something brilliant, but then, right before speaking, you crushed your own idea. You thought, what if it sounds dumb? So you said nothing. And someone else less prepared, less smart, said something similar, and everyone nodded in agreement. And you sat there thinking, that was my thought, I just didn't say it. You've been in meetings where you stayed silent, not because you had nothing to say, but because you were overthinking, polishing every word in your head, terrified that someone might ask a question you couldn't answer perfectly. You've compared yourself to that friend who speaks with ease, even when they say obvious things, and somehow people like them more. You've felt the stress of having to be prepared, the pressure to always have the right answer, the fear that if someone digs too deep, they'll expose what you don't know. You've wanted to try something new, to break the pattern, to take a risk, but that whisper stopped you. What if I look stupid? That's the invisible prison. Many live in the fear of being seen as foolish. But Nietzsche would tell you this: you will never discover truth while you are protecting your image. He believed that growth, creativity, and greatness begin the moment you allow yourself to be misunderstood, even ridiculed. Because the path to real wisdom is not about appearing intelligent, it's about having the courage to unlearn, to step into the unknown, to dance with chaos. He said, one must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. That chaos, the part of you that doubts, that hesitates, that looks clumsy when trying something new, isn't your weakness. It's the birthplace of your true power. So let me ask you this: would you rather be respected for pretending or misunderstood while becoming? Because those who dare to look foolish often end up wiser, freer, and infinitely more powerful than those who spend their lives trying to look clever. This video is not about encouraging stupidity. It's about learning the art of strategic foolishness, the kind Nietzsche, Lao Tzu, and even modern psychology quietly point toward. It's the art of holding your intelligence lightly, of knowing when to speak and when to stay silent, of knowing when to act confident and when to forget what you know to make others comfortable enough to reveal themselves. That's not manipulation. It's awareness. It's emotional wisdom, the kind that cannot be taught in books, only lived through humility and courage. Because sometimes, to truly connect with people, to truly influence the world, you must be brave enough to stop proving your intelligence and start living with strategic foolishness. So, in this video, I'll show you something that most people never understand: how to be a fool deliberately. Not the kind of fool born from ignorance or fear, but the kind that frees you from perfection, from ego, from the exhausting need to always appear clever. If you stay until the end, you'll learn how to use your inner fool as a weapon to create, to grow, and to live with a kind of fearless wisdom that most smart people never experience. Part 1: The Two Faces of Foolishness. Number 1. The false fool, the mask of insecurity. Let's start with the kind of foolishness that hurts you: the false fool. This is not wisdom. It's fear in disguise. You know it well. It's when you silence yourself even though you have something to say. It's when you hold back your ideas, because deep down, you're terrified of being wrong, of being judged. You smile, nod, and play safe. You say what sounds smart, the socially accepted, the trendy, the right. But what you really want to say stays buried. You wear a mask of intelligence, always ready to sound polished, always trying to say something that gets approval. You fear mistakes, so you wrap yourself in perfection. And yet, inside, you feel small, trapped, disconnected. Because while you're busy trying to not look stupid, you've stopped being real. You've stopped being curious, spontaneous, alive. The false fool doesn't speak truth, they speak safety. They avoid the raw and the uncertain. They confuse performance with wisdom. They play a role instead of playing life. And Nietzsche warned about this trap. He once said, "To forget one's purpose is the commonest form of stupidity." That's the paradox. You can look intelligent, sound intelligent, appear intelligent, and still live the dumbest version of your life. Because when you obsess over looking smart, you forget why you started learning in the first place. You forget your purpose: to grow, to explore, to live truthfully. That's the tragedy of the false fool. They spend their energy proving they're not stupid and end up becoming the very thing they feared. Number 2. The strategic fool, strength in disguise. Then there's another kind of fool, the strategic fool. This one isn't born from insecurity. It's born from courage. This kind of person knows the spotlight of intelligence can be blinding. Too much brilliance invites envy, resistance, and sabotage. So they choose something wiser to shine softly. They act curious. They ask questions that sound simple. They say, "I might be wrong," but they let others feel smart. And in doing so, they learn. They are not afraid to look incomplete, because they understand completion kills growth. The strategic fool knows if you want to create something new, you must first allow yourself to look clumsy, unpolished, unfinished. It's not about being stupid. It's about choosing to stay open to mistakes, to feedback, to chaos. They don't need to win every argument. They don't need to prove they know everything. Because they've already won something bigger: the freedom to learn, to evolve, to experiment. They use foolishness as a shield and a sword. A shield because no one feels threatened by the fool. A sword because curiosity cuts deeper than arrogance ever could. Nietzsche once wrote, "The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly." The strategic fool soars quietly. They let others underestimate them because it buys them peace, freedom, and time. They pretend not to know everything, not because they lack intelligence, but because they understand the wisdom of restraint. In their foolishness, they find clarity. In their mistakes, they find strength. In their humility, they find truth. That is the difference. The false fool hides from life. The strategic fool plays with life. Part 2: Why we fear looking foolish. Before you can master the art of strategic foolishness, you have to face a truth most of us avoid. We are terrified of looking stupid. Why? Because society taught us that intelligence equals worth. Number 1. The social pressure: smart equals accepted. From the time you were a child, you were rewarded for being right, for getting good grades, for having clever answers. Teachers praised you when you performed. Parents smiled when you made them proud. The world gave you love, but only when you looked smart. So you learned the unspoken rule: to be accepted, you must appear intelligent. Now, as an adult, that rule still whispers in your mind. On social media, in meetings, In conversations, you filter yourself through that lens of looking smart. Every post must sound insightful. Every word must be precise. Every opinion must be worth quoting. And yet, that very perfection suffocates you. You stop taking risks. You stop being playful. You stop asking stupid questions that could lead to brilliant answers. Because somewhere deep down, you fear the same thing every human fears: being laughed at. Number 2, the fear of losing control. Here's the truth: looking intelligent gives you control. People respect you. They trust your opinions. They hesitate to challenge you. But the moment you reveal confusion, doubt, or ignorance, you lose that control. You feel naked, vulnerable, exposed. You worry they'll stop listening, that you'll lose status, that your image, the one you've carefully built, will collapse. And that's why so many people live behind a mask of intelligence. They don't want understanding, they want control. They don't seek truth, they seek approval. But what Nietzsche teaches us, and what life always proves, is that control is the enemy of wisdom. Because control kills curiosity. And without curiosity, your mind slowly dies. Number 3, the invisible fear: I'm not allowed to be stupid. This one runs the deepest. You don't just fear being seen as stupid, you fear allowing yourself to be. Somewhere along the way, you started believing that mistakes define your worth. That being wrong equals being weak. So you over-prepare. You overthink. You polish every word until the moment to speak has already passed. You call it perfectionism. But really, it's fear of being human. And that's the saddest irony: in trying so hard to avoid looking stupid, you stop yourself from doing the very things that make you wise. Because wisdom doesn't come from knowing, it comes from trying, failing, reflecting, and trying again. That's why Nietzsche often laughed at serious thinkers. He said the greatest minds are the ones who can laugh at themselves, who can dance with uncertainty instead of hiding behind logic. To him, the fool wasn't the opposite of the wise man, it was the seed from which wisdom grows. So when you see someone who dares to look silly, who tries, fails, and tries again, don't pity them. Watch them closely. They are closer to truth than the person who hides behind big words. Because pretending to be smart is easy, but being brave enough to look foolish, that's rare. That's power. Part 3, the hidden advantage of appearing foolish. Here's a strange truth: in a world obsessed with being right, the one who dares to appear a fool often wins the quietest, deepest victories. Not because they're smarter, but because they understand human nature. When you appear a little foolish, people relax. They stop competing. They start revealing. And in those moments, you begin to see them clearly: their motives, fears, desires, all the things they hide from the smart people who make them feel judged. This is the ancient power of the fool: to disarm without fighting, to influence without boasting, to lead without ever claiming authority. It's not manipulation, it's awareness. Because those who play the fool with intention aren't stupid. They're strategic. Strategic 1. In personal relationships, acting the fool to keep the fire alive. Have you ever argued with your partner or a close friend not to find the truth, but just to prove you were right? You say, "No, you don't understand, let me explain." And the next thing you know, they're angry, distant, hurt. That's the tragedy of intellectual pride. You win the logic, but lose the love. The happiest couples, the most enduring friendships, they all share one secret: they know when to be foolish. They laugh off small mistakes, they pretend not to notice flaws, they let their partner win sometimes. Not because they're weak, but because they value peace over ego. Nietzsche once said, "Love is blind, friendship closes its eyes." He meant that love thrives not in perfect understanding, but in merciful blindness. Sometimes, pretending not to know, smiling through the small absurdities, is what keeps the connection alive. So if you want a deeper love, learn to close your eyes a little. Don't always be the clever one. Be the one who lets things go. Strategic 2. Building networks. Foolishness as the key to connection. Look at people who seem to know everyone, from executives to janitors, from artists to analysts. They're not always the smartest in the room, but they make others feel smart. They don't correct, they listen. They don't dominate, they invite. Your hidden pain might be that your circle feels small, Because you're too sharp, too precise, too quick to fix others' mistakes. No one likes to feel stupid. So when you correct people, even gently, you take away their dignity. But when you play the fool, when you ask questions you already know the answer to, when you let others explain, when you act curious, you give them a gift importance. And that's what builds loyalty, friendship, and opportunity. The foolish person becomes the center of networks, not by brilliance, but by warmth. Strategic 3. Dealing with enemies' foolishness as silent strategy. Do you have rivals the kind who always seem to compete, challenge, or undermine you? Here's a paradox: when you act too smart, you trigger their fear. Fear breeds resistance. Resistance creates war. But when you appear foolish, when you pretend not to see their tricks, when you let them believe they're winning, they lower their guard. And that's when you learn their real moves. You gather leverage quietly, and when the time comes, you strike once precisely, effectively, without warning. Every great strategist from Machiavelli to Nietzsche understood this truth. The most dangerous player is the one the enemy underestimates. So don't show your sharpness too soon. Hide your teeth behind a smile. Strategic 4. Personal growth. Foolishness as the path to wisdom. The moment you think you're smart enough, you stop learning. You stop listening. You stop asking. That's the real stupidity, the arrogance of certainty. But the wise fool never stops learning. He asks, why? Like a child. He admits what he doesn't know. He risks embarrassment to find truth. That's how innovation happens, not from the mind that knows, but from the one that wonders. Every breakthrough begins with a foolish question. Every great artist, thinker, or inventor once looked ridiculous to others. So if you want to grow, learn to say, I don't know, but I'll find out. That's not weakness. That's evolution. Strategic 5. In society, foolishness as a shield. Society loves to build you up and tear you down. When you show your intelligence too brightly, you attract critics, envy, and resistance. The more visible your brilliance, the more fragile your peace. So, play the fool. Smile. Let others think you're harmless. Let them underestimate you. You'll move freely, untouched by judgment, while they're too busy performing their own cleverness. Nietzsche once said, in every real man, a child is hidden that wants to play. To play is to disarm the world, to live lightly, even when you understand deeply. That's the highest wisdom, to see through everything, but still choose to laugh. Be that kind of fool, the one who knows too much to take life too seriously. Strategic 6. The spiritual dimension. The fool as a mirror of freedom. In ancient philosophy, the fool is sacred. In tarot, the fool is the zero, both the beginning and the end. He walks toward the unknown, smiling, because he knows that nothing truly important can be lost. To be a fool is to be free from image, free from the exhausting performance of intelligence, free from the fear of failure. It is the courage to say, I don't need to look smart, I just want to see truth. And maybe that's what Nietzsche meant when he said, a thought comes when it will, not when I will. Real wisdom comes only when you stop trying to look wise. So, the next time someone calls you a fool, smile. Because the fool who knows he's a fool is already wiser than the crowd trying to prove their intelligence. And in a world obsessed with being smart, the one who embraces foolishness consciously, courageously, is the one who truly sees. Part 4. The Art of Strategic Foolishness. By now, you understand that being a fool isn't about lack of intelligence, it's about mastering a deeper kind of intelligence, emotional, social, and existential. But here's the real challenge: how do you practice being strategically foolish without actually being foolish? It's simple, but not easy. You must learn the art of control, knowing when to play the fool and when to show the mind behind the mask. Number 1. Learn to read the room. Before you speak, before you act, watch. A fool rushes in with opinions. A wise fool observes first. When you walk into a room, notice the energy. Who's leading with ego? Who's listening quietly? When you sense tension, drop your cleverness. Ask questions instead of offering answers. Curiosity melts defenses faster than logic ever will. The strategic fool uses silence like a weapon, not to hide ignorance, but to create space for insight. Number 2. Master the art of understatement. You don't always need to be the loudest, smartest, or most intense person in the room. Sometimes, power hides best in simplicity. When you understate your abilities, people relax. They underestimate you. And that's your advantage. It's how great leaders, entrepreneurs, and thinkers survive in a noisy world, not by showing everything they know, but by letting others reveal themselves first. Understate your wisdom. Over-deliver your impact. Number 3, practice curated ignorance. You don't have to know everything, and you shouldn't try to. Strategic foolishness means choosing what not to care about. You ignore gossip. You ignore judgment. You ignore the small battles that drain your energy and distract from the real game. When people argue to prove they're right, let them win. Your silence will make them curious. Your calm will make them doubt. And your results will speak louder than any argument ever could. Number 4, use humor as armor. Fools are dangerous because they can say what others can't. They tell the truth wrapped in laughter. They expose hypocrisy through play. Humor is not just entertainment, it's protection. It softens truth, disarms criticism, and turns tension into trust. Learn to laugh at yourself. When you do, no one can use you as their joke because you've already owned the punchline. Number 5, embrace the paradox. The fool lives in paradox, smart enough to appear stupid, confident enough to look humble, strong enough to seem harmless. In this paradox lies true mastery. When you stop chasing the image of being wise, you finally become wise. When you stop trying to win, you start to win in ways that matter. Number 6, turn it inward. Be the fool for yourself. You've spent years pretending to be smart, capable, in control. But what if just for once you drop the performance? Ask yourself the foolish questions you've been avoiding. Am I really happy? Do I even know what I'm chasing? What would happen if I stopped trying so hard to look perfect? That's where your true growth begins, not in pretending to be right, but in daring to be real. Because the moment you allow yourself to look foolish, you open the door to transformation. So when life humbles you, when you fail, get misunderstood, or they call you a fool, don't fight it. Smile. That's where wisdom begins. Because the fool who accepts his foolishness sees deeper than the one obsessed with being right. If this spoke to you, hit like, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe for more ideas that make you think, feel, and wake up.